Dear fellow truth seekers, thank you and welcome for visiting my channel, MythoReligio. MythoReligio is a series of books about religious comparison studies between the stories in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism, directly from their sacred books and world mythologies, hence the name MythoReligio. The purpose is to retrace the prehistory of humanity, since I am not fully satisfied with either the explanations from the point of view of creationists nor evolutionists. There are so many missing links in both explanations. If you feel the same, then you are on the right channel. In this book series, I will also analyze about the prehistory of humanity from the archaeological records, modern scientific point of view, and other alternative theories, such as the ancient alien theories and Atlantis or Lemuria legends. After thorough research of circa 30 years, I recognize many similarities between all religious stories and even mythologies, and surprisingly, some of them are in accordance or even beyond modern science that have been proven as correct. Thus, I came to the conclusion that all religions must have come from the same source. And all these religious stories and mythologies, although heavily jumbled up, are actually telling one mega story, the true prehistory of our common ancestors. This mega story is quite different than what we have been told to believe and will truly blow your mind, as it is more fascinating than our imagination. If you have watched the earlier videos in this channel, I believe you can see some of the similarities too. If you haven't and you truly want to do a religious comparative study, I suggest that you do so. The best way to do a comprehensive religious study via this channel is by watching the videos starting from number 1 and continue until this present video and so on. That way you will see a clear pattern. For deeper analysis that I cannot share in this platform due to its sensitive nature that leads to the above conclusion, kindly read the books that are available in ebook format that can be found in my website www.mythoreligio.com or the physical books at Amazon in color or black and white version. Norse Mythologies. Dear fellow truth seekers, in this video I will continue with the myth telling from the European continent. This time it is from the Scandinavian region, or present-day Denmark, Norway and Sweden, in the northern part of Europe. The modern name given to the seafaring people occupying that region is known as the Vikings. They raided, pirated, traded and voyaged throughout Europe, including the British Isles, France, Estonia and Kievan Rus, modern-day Belarus, Ukraine and part of Russia, and even went as far as the Mediterranean, North Africa, the Middle East and North America from the late 8th century until the 11th century CE. The Viking or Scandinavian or Norse mythologies have been passed down from one generation to the next in the form of poetry. The original beliefs were long lost. Our knowledge about them is mainly based on the Book of Eddas, or plural Edur, and other medieval texts. These were written down during and after they turned to Christianity in Iceland in the 13th century CE. The stories are scattered and sometimes they overlap. The whole myth seems to be concentrated on one big war between the gods and the evil force, a war called Ragnarok, sort of biblical Armageddon. Ragnarok is believed to take place in the future. However, the events leading to it already took place in the past. The Norse mythology has many influence today, in the form of fantasy video games and also in many fantasy movies. Probably the most well-known is J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Before I tell you the story of Ragnarok, let's start from the beginning first. And like all the myths that I have shared with you in the previous videos, this myth too has similarities with the Abrahamic religious story, in particular the story of the Great Flood, i.e. the biblical Noah, although with a twist. The creation of the universe. In the beginning there was Ginnungagap, the great emptiness, the unending void. It was a region so vast that it extended in all directions with room for billions of universes. Then, millions of eons before our universe existed, two distinct regions came into being, two completely different worlds, the lands of fire and ice. The land of fire was called Muspelheim, which means the home of the destroyers of the world. And it was a truly terrible place. There was nothing in Muspelheim except black, burning rocks, continually erupting volcanoes, molten lava, and a sky permanently filled with black, choking smoke. Nothing lived in Muspelheim at first, except for one being, Surt, the dreaded fire demon. Surt was the first being. He spent eons forging his weapon to be wielded on Doomsday called the Ragnarok, the final destiny of the gods. The other region was a land of ice and snow called Niflheim. The rivers and seas of the universe had their origin in Niflheim, flowing out of Helgemyr, the primal river, or else they stem from the freezing depth of Elivagar. However, the waters of this icy wilderness were anything but pure, for Elivagar was polluted by numerous streams of vile black poison that flow into its waters, corrupting them and forming black ice when it reached the surface. As eons passed and the lands of fire and ice continued to spread around Ginnungagap, they eventually came in contact with each other. As the freezing waters of Niflheim fell, they mixed with the ash and clay of Muspelheim and forming the body of a giant. Now, when life sprang forth in Ginnungagap, it did not happen in a matter of minutes. In fact, the giant lay prone and unconscious for many eons, unfeeling and unmoving. Its name was Ymir, the first of the mountain giants or Jotuns. For eons, Ymir lay sleeping, and the various elements of the body solidified and Ymir began to sweat. Ymir was a hermaphrodite and could reproduce asexually. From beneath his or her left armpit, a male and female giant were born. And soon after, his or her right foot mated with his or her left, and they gave birth to a six-headed giant son. His first creatures were the founder of the icy mountain giant races. Elsewhere in Ginnungagap, another being had been born following the merger of fire and water. This was an enormous cow called Audumbla. Audumbla was formed at the same time as Ymir, but none of the poisons of Elivagar were mingled into her creation, because she was formed from the pure ice of Niflheim and fire of Muspelheim. Since neither grass nor trees existed, Audumbla had nothing to eat. So she fed herself by licking the ice, and as she fed, great streams of milk flowed from her udders, feeding the giant Ymir. And something very strange happened. As Audumbla licked away the ice and night began to fall at the end of the first day, she uncovered the hair of a man. Throughout the second day, Audumbla kept on licking and sucking the ice until the man's head and shoulders were uncovered. On the third day, complete beings stood uncovered, naked and beautiful in the eyes, huge, powerful, and awesome to look upon. This was Buri, the father of the gods. Buri gave birth to a son named Bor, who married Besla, a giantess. In time, Bor and Besla had 3 sons who were called Vili, Ve, and Odin. These beings mentioned so far were the primal beings of the universe. from whom all the other gods, giants, and men would descend. All of them had been formed out of the nothingness of Ginnungagap, between the realms of Muspelheim and Niflheim. Those which had been created within the pure ice and fire like Buri were good, but those whose creation had been tainted by the black corruption of Elivagar were evil. Similar to the Greco-Roman deities myth, where the younger god Zeus killed his own father Cronus, the three younger Norse gods, Vili, Ve, and Odin, or the sons of Bor, killed their forefather Ymir. And when Ymir fell, the blood from his wounds poured forth, creating a great flood. Ymir's blood drowned the entire tribe of Jotuns, except for a couple of Jotuns, i.e., Ymir's grandson Belgemir and his wife. Then, like biblical Noah, Belgemir and his wife brought forth new families of Jotuns. Why are there so many similar religions and myths around the world? Are these coincidental? I will share my own analysis to all these similar stories, not only what I have shared in this video, but also in the other videos. But I'm not doing it yet, as there are many more stories from around the world that are similar and overlapping. After that, I will analyze and compare all these similar religious stories and mythologies with modern scientific data and/or archaeological record to make sense out of them. But for now, allow me to continue with the rest of the Norse mythologies in my next videos. Thank you for watching and hope to see you next week.